Good morning. I'm Audrey Nagerson, and today I'm going to be recording with
Vincent Villarreal.
Ethan Otto.
And today we'll be discussing 3 questions. The first is, how do we contribute to society and or graphic design as an entity or society? The second is, what do we want our impact to be and why, in any sense? And the third is, how do we see graphic design changing or forming in the next 15 to 20 years? Today, Vincent's going to start us off with talking about the first question: how do we contribute to society and or graphic design as an entity or society?
So I think, we've discussed this in class, and I think a lot of us, we thought we contributed to society, and some of us didn't think we contributed to society. But I think those of us that do contribute, I think the question has to be brought up, where does ego play into that? Because I work for a local racetrack, and I feel privileged that I can, make some content that is contributing to the history there. And, I've looked at posters from the 1950s and the 60s from previous people who have worked there, and I've taken some inspiration for various events from those. But, you have to look at it as is this an ego check? Do I have kind of that right to be in that place, or should I still kind of be humble, because I feel that I'm creating, I'm creating a part of history there, and it's a part of history and a niche that's near and dear to me, but do I deserve to have an ego? I don't know, do I, I can feel like that, but is that
what is your ego, though?
I don't know, it's I can do this.
You're a part of this.
Yeah.
I'm creating history is your ego.
Yeah.
And then I totally get it. It's
but
definitely
is that
something.
naive to say that as a 20-year-old?
Exactly, yeah. It's hard to keep yourself in check when you're I don't know if it is creating history, because you can go through current day not knowing what will actually be written down in the history books until you have hindsight to look at it. So you just kind of have to have that frame of mind is what I'm doing going to be remembered in the future? If it is, then totally.
Well, that and I don't know, will the business I'm even working for be around, in X amount of time?
Right.
That's a weird thing to think about too. But I think I want to think that the stuff I'm creating right now will inspire. I know we're kind of getting to a different question, but I want to think that the stuff I'm creating will
right.
people will look at.
Will have a lasting impact.
Yeah, it will do something with them.
Yeah, I think when we were talking about this question in class, everyone was just so humble about it, and they were basically thinking, no, I have no impact. How could me, such, just one person have an impact on society as a whole?
Mm-hmm.
But you do have an impact, just as you were saying. You're seeing all these past projects, and seeing, it's being, you're being impacted by those. So everyone does have an impact. And I just think that it's interesting how humble everyone is about that, because anything that you do make can be seen by someone else and impact them.
Yeah, and I think there's 2 things I want to say to that. At first, I think a lot of people, at least when they're in college, feel there's not a disconnect, but I think there are some of our peers from high school who kind of went to the workforce right away and are already kind of, contribute. I guess you could say contributing to the economy or workforce, etc. And they're already kind of making some money while we're in college and we're not making a full-time some of us have part-time jobs and we're not making full-time salary. So I have to wonder if there's some of that kind of sneaks into some people's heads who are in college of I haven't contributed to society because I'm not kind of approved. I don't have my little diploma. I'm not I'm not approved for society and something like that. So but the second thing I want to say is but you're in an AIGA.
Yeah.
Ethan, I think you might be as well. And that's contributing to society in a way. You're contributing to AIGA, which is a big contributor. So I guess that's taking down a different road, but you are kind of contributing to this larger scale thing, but I think even on a small scale you're still contributing to the people that are in IAGA, AIGA, and then you're the person that's overlooking you and the faculty that's overlooking you and stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, especially as a graphic design community, we all influence each other so much. Everyone in my class is such a big inspiration, and just continues to I think we push each other just by working hard individually, and just we all are very open and collaborative, and talk through our projects with one another.
Yeah.
And so we are constantly influencing each other and contributing to graphic design as a society.
Yeah, it might be a small society, but I mean, you can be, the famous graphic designers, but I think society can be defined as so many different, you know,
Yeah,
it
many
doesn't,
things.
yeah, it doesn't have to be like the traditional thought.
Mhm.
Like society could be our little cohort
Yeah.
circle, you know.
Yeah, for
So-
sure.
Yeah, definitely expanding on how big societies can be and how big they are. Like, in my first frame of reference, when I think of society, I think of, like, almost a global community, like how big a whole thing is. Like, graphic design, as in everyone who does graphic design is part of the society. So then thinking of one person or one small school's cohort can't really affect what happens in a global stage. But then you think that society doesn't have to just be one level, it can be zoomed in really, really far. So thinking on that, it makes it interesting to think about how much just our three people here sitting here can contribute to our society, and then what that does for a larger scale. And I think that's very interesting of what
Mhm.
that can affect.
Yeah. Well, it's also just like kind of like what you were saying, a snowball effect. Like one person can influence someone else who might impact a ton of people.
Yeah.
You know, like on a wide scale. So
Yeah.
you can impact anyone
Yeah,
all the time.
yeah, I've-
like you just have no idea.
Yeah, well, I've definitely, like, at one of the past places I've worked for, someone in my position or something similar, they always reference his name. And I was like, oh, Casey was here and he was really great, and, you know, but yeah, and it was just so funny to see, like, you know, now he's gone on and done a lot of really cool things. I never got the chance to meet him, but, you know, I
Yeah.
follow him, it's like, whoa, but, like, it's just so funny how people were like, oh, he was really great, you know, kind of just
Yeah,
talked about him
just
so
continue
much.
to
So,
talk about that
and I know
person.
I've had professors that kind of, well, we had a I mean, I guess they don't do that as much as businesses, but I still feel like they have,
For sure.
you know, they have feelings like that or comparisons that they just can't,
Yeah.
you know,
Specific students, specific people that are impacting
or
them.
cohorts.
Yeah,
Yeah,
or
exactly.
cohorts,
They're
for
like,
sure.
yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's something that you don't realize, because if you're on the other end of that, if you are the person being talked about, you never hear it because
Yeah.
you've moved on. So it definitely helps. I don't know, I guess with ego, so that you don't become an egomaniac, thinking that everybody's talking about you in the future. But then to think that your impact did have a lasting contribution to people, that's not just you, but then the generation after you, and then how that affects them and whatnot.
Mm-hmm. The next question.
So the next question that we have is going to be about how our design careers can kind of shape the next stage of our lives. And I think something really important with that is what we decide on going to. I know personally for me, I think of graphic design and I think of advertisement. I think of how and what companies do to design things to sell people. So that's what I think of when I think of graphic design, but then other people might think of differently. So then that can influence how the culture thinks and feels, because really what the advertisements show can kind of show what the society feels at that time. Like recently there have been a lot of advertisements about Black Lives Matter and all these other movements that have been going on, and then that's graphic design. That's not just political statements. That's people making an advertisement trying to sell something with the message that this is what we believe in and this is what should be the norm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously, we've seen throughout our class that graphic design and our careers and our potential just has, like, the ability to impact so many people, especially with advertising and that sort of thing. So, yeah, we are constantly seeing that.
Yeah, and I think, like, I want to change gears a little bit, but I think, like, to your point, like, graphic design is, like, I feel like it's on the cusp of being a cultural powerhouse changer, if you will.
Mm.
Like, it's at that point, and, like, there's a lot of graphic design we've seen in recent social movements that, like, is contributing,
Mm-hmm.
and I know, I guess to me it feels subtle, and I guess maybe Matt feels a different way, you know, it might not be as subtle. I mean, he's kind of pointing out it's not as subtle, but to me it feels a little bit subtle, and it's not like social media is gonna right in your face. But I don't know. I guess I'm talking out loud and circling my point. But I don't know. I just feel like graphic design is on that cusp of, like, being realized as, like, a huge, like, communicator. Like, I mean, like becoming, like, it's gonna take over. I don't know, the news or something. Like, it's
Yeah.
really close, and I don't know. I just feel like it's also got such a wide array of, like, things, because it can be very artistic and very
Infographic, kind of.
Well, yes, but I think it can be very infographic, or not infographic, like artistic.
Informational. There you go. That's what I was trying to say.
Like subjective. Like I was saying, like, it can be
Okay.
very like one spectrum, one side of the spectrum is like artistic and like, you know, subjective and like whatever the heck you want. But then on the other side, like the more businessy communication side is definitely the infographic side, and it can be very like impactful and like, but yeah, I don't know.
I wanna say, like, with the rise of social media, I think graphic design has become more powerful than it has before because of the reach that it can have, and not just the magazines that some people subscribe to, but how social media can be a free platform to advertise your
Yeah.
opinions, and using that can help you influence other people. So I think with the rise of that, graphic design and advertisement and everything has become more influential than it has ever been.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I just don't think, I don't know if I necessarily agree with you, Vince, because,
And that's what, yeah.
like, well, you're saying everyone's, like, beginning to realize that graphic design has such a big impact.
I guess
And,
my point
yeah.
was like the social media. Like I don't know. Like I
Gotcha.
feel like it's like I don't know. It always has felt like a communicator, but it's never felt like strictly a communicator. And I guess I don't know what I want it to be, but part of me is like, if it wants to be a communicator, it should be. But I don't also. It's not rooted in that though.
Yeah, for sure. I just want to say something then,
Yeah.
even if that wasn't your point. Like, I don't know if everyone does realize that graphic design, like, has such a big impact. Like, before joining the graphic design program at UWSP, like, I really never paid attention to any of that stuff, and when I saw an advertisement, I wasn't like, graphic design, wow, like, that influences so many people, this ad influences so many people.
Yeah.
But now, like, being forced to look at that, being taught that in my classes, not forced in a bad way, but like, yeah, being taught that in my classes, being exposed to that, like, it is incredible, the expansiveness of graphic design and the ability to reach so many different people. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting to be on the backside of this, of going from, oh, like, I don't know what this is supposed to say, to I know exactly what this is saying and who it's saying to. Definitely changes the idea of who you're advertising for and to. So I think definitely I would agree, after joining this program, the graphic design program, I definitely am more aware of what people or advertisements and companies are trying to do to sell you on stuff. And most of the time it is probably subliminal, just something in the background that you're supposed to think of when you think of a name or a product. But then the more obvious it gets, sometimes you lose some of your base and it becomes scary almost, so that people don't want to partake in your product.
Yeah, I think that's the other good thing about like taking these classes, that like, we're starting like to know, you know, and recognize these things and be like, okay, like, you know, for one of our other classes, we've had to research a lot of like what users, you know, what their what their preferences are, experience preferences, etc. And I think the more, you know, we can do our research, you know, on a project by project base, but I think the more we're kind of exposed to like just these ads and kind of realizing that design is all around us, which was a scary thought for me when it kind of hit me. I think like the more we realize that, the more like I feel like stuff becomes a little bit more, like you said, like you can segment it out in your brain. Like, who's that for? What's the message? Like, you read it a different way than a regular consumer. But I also think that can be a tool, because like it can be so easy to see something and then be like, I'm going to borrow, you know, elements or something, or colors, and that's another scary thing, is like you don't want to be behind the curve or on the curve, you want to be ahead of the curve. So I think like it's fine to kind of look at those things and take it, but I think the thing too is like you have to be really careful of like taking it and then using it. I think there should be some critical thinking kind of included.
Yeah, for sure. All right, I think we're going to move on to our next big question. So, what do we want our impact to be and why as designers, in any sense? And then, Vince, did you start that one off? To give better understanding of complex innovation.
I think we've already done that. I think we could jump to number 3 if we want, and then just kind of go from there. But,
well, I don't know. I want to talk about the impact.
Yeah, let's go. Go for it.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, so something that I'm really passionate about as a designer is, like, I am really passionate about the user experience and making a good user experience for someone, because there's so many different frustrating, like, products and services to use, especially like websites for people. And I really just, as a designer, want to try and remedy some of those and make like good products that people love to use, you know?
Mhm.
So that's what I want my impact to be as a designer. And I think, Ethan, you said something about like make people enjoy heavy topics and laugh.
Basically, thinking about complex science topics and then reducing it into something that a lot of people can understand and, like, I don't know, come to grips with. Like, if you're talking about climate change, there's a lot of scientific things that come with that, but then breaking it down to small parts that the general population can understand is really cool. And to be able to show them, like, this is how things work without having to have a PhD in it makes it really cool. It's basically a cool opportunity for graphic design to have to show people these things.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that is a neat, unique thing. I think there's a lot of like scary things, I guess, with those bigger topics. And I agree, Ethan. Like, you should segment it down. I think graphic design can be a very nice way of like. I mean, guess creative media in general, but graphic design specifically, it can be a very nice way to like break those things down, make them not so cold and steely and
For
hard. You know, a little bit more warm and fuzzies.
It
But
can bring emotion to those products.
yes, I agree, and that's crucial for a lot of design, you know, or creative media in general, is to make the user experience something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And then, I don't know, bringing emotion into it is great, and making people laugh can make people more receptive to ideas and change.
Yeah.
So when you kind of make it more fun and playful, then people might enjoy it better and then not become so passive.
Well, I think like that emotion thing is something I've explored in my own like personal work. You know, I work at the racetrack, you know, creating these videos and for the bigger events. I know for like we had a huge event last year. We had a ton of like famous Wisconsin drivers come, and I was like, you know, and it was an event in honor of a famous driver as well. So I'm like picking the music, and I was very specific, and I really wanted to hit out the park. But there was, you know, I kind of used this Western twang, and it was to be, you know, the thought in my head was to be in honor of him, but also to kind of relate, you know, him from a previous genre or era, and he was such a, you know, rough and tumble, and the guys still out there are still rough and tumble, and that was the emotion. I'm like, I want these people to feel like this is like, while we're celebrating him, it's still like one of those things that, like, you know, is crazy. And I think I've picked other music that's very cinematic and dramatic for like the promos. So I think like if you're not trying to make the user feel something, I think, you know, that's definitely a big thing for me, especially in my video creative work.
Yeah. All right. Third question, you guys.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we see graphic design changing or forming in the next 15 to 20 years?
UX design.
UX
Like
design.
going over, I mean, obviously that, you know, but we're going over that right now in another class, and it's nuts. Like, there's so much research and I don't want to say crap, but stuff, you know, like it's like it's so much. Like my brain melted one of those days. I was like, oh man, like I cannot believe it, because you can look at the space, you know, the spacing and the types of shapes and the fonts and the language and the action and like you said, you know, there's a lot of frustrating websites and apps and kind of things that users use. And I'm right with you, because even in the website, you know, I'm doing right now, I'm like, well, how much info do I want on this page? Do I want to, you know, do I want to direct them to this page, or even though I don't think I'm going to get to that point, but it's like I'm starting to think about it, and it's like, you know, you want your user to be informed and have all that info, but I mean, I think user experience design is like it's the next biggest thing.
Yeah.
I mean, and it doesn't apply to everything, but I mean, I think if you're gonna make something thinking of that end user and how they're gonna like feel, interact, get from it, do, etc., is what's gonna be.
I mean, I just think UX design continuing forward as like technology advances and like having to learn like how to make an interface for like new technology and that sort of thing. I mean, so many people even right now like haven't even caught up to like maybe having a website, you know, that's fully functional, or just like a decent website even, and there's just so much that still needs to be done, like for so many different businesses to have like good UX design.
But I think there's like opportunities too within UI and like the metaverse to be like to take UI to like, while we are at this normal stage of phones, computers, websites, you know, there will be new technology, like, you know, maybe like it's in your glasses or in your mirror. There's like AR, augmented reality, or little like hoods or something, you know, like that's a brand new interface
Exactly.
that people are gonna have to do. But
Yeah.
I think like the metaverse, and while the opinion on the metaverse is still out, like that's definitely like a place where I think while it is like a new place to kind of be,
Mm-hmm.
I think it can be an experimental place as well to be like, well, how does this work? Like I don't know, it's a very
Yeah.
like exciting thing that I almost wish we were covering more, but I also know that it's so new that like
It's hard to
How do you cover that in class?
yeah, exactly. Like you need someone to like, you know, a professor that can fully put their time into it when they're
Oh
already
my gosh.
focusing on something else. But you know, I think
Yeah.
it'd be one of those cool things that like if we could somehow experiment in there, be like, well,
That's
what is this
crazy.
user
I
design
don't even
look
know
like?
what that would look like.
Yeah, I don't know either, but
Yeah.
and I know like this much of the metaverse, you know, a tiny fraction, but like I know of it, and I'm like I know it's got this potential that is
Yeah.
seems huge.
Yeah.
It's really cool because all this stuff is constantly evolving. It's hard to say what will happen even in the next year, let alone 15 to 20 years. It's just easier to see that growth with
Yeah.
a larger time frame. But to see how a great example is like graphics in movies. Like if you see Toy Story, like Toy Story 1 versus 4, you can definitely see the difference in how and what the quality looks like and how many polygons go into each character and everything.
Mhm.
And that can kind of correlate with what basically design looks like, and how that evolves. And there's eras, like there is with like art and the Renaissance and all these other things. There's that same thing, but I guess in a smaller scale with UX UI. So to think about what these augmented realities would look like, you can't just jump. Like you can have a bunch of concept art of what it would look like, but in reality, you're gonna have slow steps to get there, and then those steps will change dramatically about what it would look like and what would the consumer want. So that also depends on how that would look and what that end product will look like. So it's very cool to think about how going back to the culture is what our decisions and what we're learning today is going to affect what happens tomorrow,
Mhm.
and how big that's going to be when new stuff comes out like augmented reality and everything.
Well, I think augmented reality is the new website. Like a graphic, like I think the traditional train of thought has been like graphic designers, web designers, like, you know, I think a lot of people think they're the same, but I think, you know, those of us that know, I think they can be different entities.
Yeah.
Like there are obviously programs that kind of make it easier, but
Mm-hmm.
you know, they're different things. And I think augmented reality is the new like website. Like it's the new like hand that will mold to the graphic design hand, if you
Right.
will, and like it's a new thing that we should learn, because like, you know, you can design for augmented reality, but how the heck does that work?
Right. It's
Like-
it's something really difficult to
Yeah,
do.
yeah.
And you kind of need the basis of what augmented reality is going to look like, period. And it's really interesting, basically going back to evolution of what that would actually look like, of how that will evolve and change and everything.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then, so do you think that graphic design will ever disappear?
No.
Never?
No, I don't think it will. I think no, because it's so versatile. Like we said, like it has roots. It has a spectrum. Or both sides of the spectrum are rooted in, you know, abstract or more subjective artistic pieces that aren't, you know, trying to communicate. I mean, they're trying to communicate something with you, but they're not like a business graphic or a mass communication graphic. It's like a, you know, just kind of your emotion. If you want to be very affected by it, you can, you know, or kind of a thing. But then like there's other graphics that are directly trying to speak to you
Yeah.
in a very visually appealing way, which is, you know, you could just wrote that on a regular piece of paper, but you know, you can make it more visually appealing. So I think like I don't see it ever going away, and I don't think I ever see art going away. Like we'll see certain forms of it. Like I mean, possibly like, you know, obviously that's kind of how, you know, ebb and flow of certain forms, but I don't see like that art form ever really, you know, as a whole ever going away. That creative thing. I don't think I ever see it going away.
Yeah. That's fair.
Yeah, I think it's also because when you think of graphic design, you can think of so many things, and one of the things I think about of the future of graphic design, and if you would say, will it disappear, is who uses it. So that's like the companies, and something powerful that graphic design can do is for like propaganda. So even the people who want to rule everybody by themselves as a dictatorship, they need graphic design and propaganda to be able to, keep control of their people. So that's something that side of the party will never get rid of because it's a powerful tool.
Yeah.
And then on the other side, to be able to, appeal to the masses, having this graphic design and information set out to them and so that they can understand is powerful. And it's something that they wouldn't want to lose because it's just something easy to understand, and it doesn't take that much to show them what's what. So I think it's important that graphic design stays, and I don't think it's going to go because of how useful of a tool it is. Even though it's hard to say if it's expensive or not because you got to pay the people to learn to actually do it, to actually produce.
I think we can be like linked or likened to like woodworkers, like kind of like or builders, kind of like there's certain craft to building a house,
right?
And learning all the codes and like how we have to learn all the visual structures and stuff. So, sorry.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. And learning all of that shows how important this stuff is, and I think graphic design won't disappear. It'll just evolve. Even if like robots take over all of our jobs and stuff, it's still something that's going to need to be made because it's hard to advertise a gray paste versus something that's, I don't know, a Cliff Bar or whatever, because it has such a unique shape, form, smell, taste, all these other things that you need to advertise and show to the consumer.
Hold on, time out. I want to roll back. Okay, if we have robots take over the world, I want to talk. Just for laughs and giggles, if everyone's a robot on the planet, do we think graphic design actually still exists? Because I feel like it only exists
if everyone is a robot.
If everything becomes mechanical, I seriously think that we have to have like some sort of like human something.
Yeah.
Like because like then I feel like then they could just get their info by binary code.
Yeah.
And, like,
graphic design becomes SKU codes and stuff.
Exactly. Like I'm like I guess it could still be graphic design.
Could you argue that's graphic design? Who knows?
Yeah, but I think the traditional sense of graphic design that we think of probably won't exist.
Yeah, like.
Sorry, I was like.
I would agree.
Oh
If
my
robots
gosh.
take over, there probably wouldn't be as much of a need for graphic design.
No, because they could just get their AR augmented, and just pop right up.
I think humans need graphic design because they need to know what's going on, how much things are, what it'll do for you, and
It's
stuff.
visual information. We
Exactly.
get so much from visual information. So yeah, it's incredibly important for
Right.
us.
Right.
I have a surprise question.
Wow.
Okay. Okay. So, do you guys think it is good to be like singular disciplinary? Because I know I'm trying to do some videos and photo on the side. And I think you guys do a little bit of that, but like what do you guys think for the future?
You mean like just doing graphic
Like,
design?
yeah, like,
or
you
like
think-
just exposing myself to graphic design?
Yeah, like you guys like. I mean, obviously, expose. That's a broad term, but you think like. I take a class in like web design, or I know business and marketing is kind of something related, but like, I don't know, like I guess in terms of like creative ability.
Yeah. I think so many things go into graphic design and can inspire you and can help you
Yeah.
with graphic design.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I'm like trying to expose myself to as many random things that like could help me. So like taking a marketing class, like looking at web design and stuff, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Video, like photography, all that can eventually help you later on, and I'm just like trying to get as much experience in anything at all, like just so I can either say that I have experience or that I know that I have experience, and then can be able to use that later on, like because it's such a multifaceted field that so many different things go into it, and like literally anything can influence you or help you with like a project later on.
Yeah.
And so I'm just, like I said, trying to expose myself to like everything that I can, even if it doesn't seem like, even if it's not like this is a graphic design class, I know that this specific element of like maybe a marketing class can help me later on, like with graphic design. So
yeah, it's hard to be just one thing when, like you said, it's so vast of what you can do. And it's hard to play the other side of, okay, I want to just be one thing. Well, that one thing is connected to so many other things. Like if you're just product design, well, how does advertising work in with that? How does brand development work in with that? And all these other things that are associated with it. You can't really just be one thing without looking at other things. I think it's important. I think it's nice and cool to be able to be one profession. That's really nice. I don't know. I think it'd be cool to be like not a jack of all trades, but just a master of one, where you're able to design really great packaging of like this, but then you need to be able to know your product best by expanding on what you think and what you know, by looking at other things that's not just your field, because graphic design isn't just one thing, it's so many.
Yeah. I think that if you would just try and only like close yourself off, I think that you would be a pretty bland designer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that a lot of people would want to hire you, because I don't think that you would be having like exposure and inspiration from like a lot of different things.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and like inspiration can come from anywhere.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Seriously, it really can. It's nuts. Like, I mean, there's so many times that I like see other forms of like traditional media that I wish I could incorporate, but then I'm like, well, that's a limitation. I'm like, I can't do that. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely like times where you kind of like see something and you're struck by. Like, I've seen photos where I'm like, wow, like the colors, the saturation, like just how how it looks. I'm like, I wish I could put that kind of color, how it looks, and take that in the graphic. But you have to kind of recreate the colors, and it'd be really hard. But
yeah.
I've definitely done that with other forms of media and been like,
Yeah.
that's cool. So
All these things are really interesting to think about.
Yeah, they are.
You know, we could obviously talk for a lot more time about all of these things, but I think that's pretty much the time that we have. Does anybody have any closing statements they want to say or anything?
no, I think
Graphic design is everywhere.
yeah, I think it's an exciting time. Like, I think, it's an exciting time in our lives, and I think an exciting time in graphic design. I think with the metaverse, kind of starting, and there's a lot of things that, it's just exciting. Like, it's hard to not be excited. I think.
Yeah.
Especially since
I
COVID's
agree.
ending and things are really picking back up for the most part.
Yeah.
So it's just exciting.
Yeah, it's fun to see what's next.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, we've been the graphic design team. We'll see you next time.